Well, good morning. We're glad that you're here. Thank you for coming out on a very sketchy weather day. We appreciate it. It's been challenging. Last year it was 53 below, so I don't know if this is the best timing, but really appreciate people that want to grow, want to flourish, want their organizations to thrive, and are willing to take a Saturday and invest your time and energy into hearing from local leaders. And I think that these are experienced, effective leaders. I think you're going to walk away with some great stuff. I know I learn something every year. This is our 8th year. I'm Derek. If you don't know me, I'm the pastor here at Journey Church, and we're just happy to have you here. This is a gift to the community. The basic idea is that, I believe whether it's a military unit, a church, a nonprofit, a business, a university, a state, if the leader is growing and moving forward, then the organization is blessed. It helps the organization. It raises the organization. And so this is a gift to the community to help all of us get better, to do better, and to learn some things. And so our first two are Patty Mongold's going to come up, and Dave Durham's going to come up, and we're going to interview them. And if you could welcome them, go ahead and give them a hand. And you'll have to turn those on. Just go ahead and grab one. Yeah. And there's a little switch. And so they're both with Mount McKinley Bank. And Patty's the CEO and the president. And Dave is executive vice president. And so I just thought it would be good to interview them. I also want to mention, so I have my phone on me. And if they're going to put my phone number up periodically, we're going to open it up to your questions, and the way we're going to get them is you text me the questions, and I'll read them to them. So I have a series of questions I'm going to ask them, but as we talk to them, if you have questions, feel free to text me those, and I will look at those, and we'll throw them at them at the end, okay? So, but so glad that you're here, so grateful that they've given their time. They have both been with Mount McKinley Bank for a long time. And just a little, unsolicited plug, this church, this building that you're in, they're the ones that gave us the mortgage to do that. So we are very grateful. And it worked out really well. So it's been good. So I just wanted to, like the opening question, maybe just tell us a little bit about your history with the bank, kind of where you are today, how you got there.
Sure. Well, the first thing I want to do is correct something Derek said. When we first started this, when he first talked to us about doing this day, then those titles were accurate. However, as of last Thursday night, David is now the president of Mount McKinley Bank and the chief credit administrator. I'm the CEO and the chairman of the board of trustees. So.
Okay. All right. Congratulations. Yeah.
So, yeah, Dave got a well-deserved promotion, and it's just a sign of what we're talking about today, which is the succession plan. So, I've been, as Derek said, I've been with the bank a long time. I just had my 49th anniversary with the bank.
Wow. I
started as a teller in 1976. I was a very young mother, hadn't been married a year, and had been looking for a job. I had two sisters that worked at the bank, and they said, it's a great place to work. You should come over. And they left, and I never did. So I've worked in almost every department in the bank. When I first went to work there, we did not have a commercial lending department. But for many years, I ran the loan servicing department, so I had a lot of exposure to mortgage lending, consumer lending. And then I went back into the operations side of the bank and managed our branch out here on University Avenue for a few years. And then I got enmeshed in the IT world. I'm not a techie person. I'm not an IT person, but I managed it. And I've just been moving around the bank ever since. So it's a great place to work. Been very happy to be there, and I've been very blessed to have had the opportunities I've had.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. My banking journey started in California. I just had graduated college. I spent the summer up in the Eastern Sierras fly fishing and cutting firewood for my dad. And I came home for my grandmother's birthday, and he was talking to a friend of his from North Pole, Alaska, and they asked, well, what's Dave doing? And then they said, well, he should come to Alaska. And so my dad turned to me and said, Dave, do you want to go to Alaska? I said, sure. And so a month later, I ended up here, got an interview with National Bank of Alaska. I took a position as a teller, and that was in 1992. And then I worked my way into the management training program. And from there, that started in Anchorage. They shipped me to King Salmon, to Kotzebue, to Barrow, to Fairbanks, to Delta Junction, to Homer, to Soldotna. And I thought I was going to end up staying in Soldotna for a while, but Mount McKinley Bank called, and the first time they called my wife, I asked my wife if she wanted to move to Fairbanks, and she was born and raised in Homer, and she said no. And about 18 months later, the bank called and asked if I was interested in changing my mind, and I asked my wife, and she kind of saw how miserable I was, and she consented to moving to Fairbanks, and that was in 2011 that I started my journey with Mount McKinley Bank, and it's been the best decision for my career I ever made.
Okay. Well, one question I have is, how do your leadership styles differ?
Well, it's interesting because Dave and I talked about this, and really, we don't think our leadership styles differ that much, but he might have changed his mind since yesterday when we chatted. But really, it's not so much leadership skills, but I'm a self-admitted procrastinator, and Dave is not. Dave is the opposite of that. And so we've managed to make that work for us, right? He pushes me, and I pull back, and sometimes in the end, we go my way, and sometimes in the end, we go his way. So I think it's been a pretty good partnership, and I think we've done a lot of really good things for the bank because of our two styles. Not necessarily leadership. Like I said, I think we agree on a lot of that. So, Dave?
No, I would agree. I think as far as how we look at managing people and leading people, and especially the care that we try to take for our organization. And but I will say that, sometimes my desire to get things done, sometimes it's nice to have Patty's thoughtfulness and willing to look at all sides of the issues before we just jump with all feet in and try to get something done. So I think that benefits the organization greatly.
Sometimes we have to do that, but we do maneuver that pretty well as well. Sometimes things are time sensitive and have to get done quickly, and I think we've worked really well in that area.
And so my next question is, what is a resource, whether that's a book or a podcast or a convention, I don't know, that has influenced your leadership?
Sure. As we'll talk about a little bit later in our interview, the bank was very generous to send me to the Pacific Coast School of Banking when they had told me that I was going to become the senior vice president in charge of the commercial consumer lending. I asked our president then, Craig, if I could go to PCBS and try to get that 10,000-foot management view. And the last year, that was really all dedicated to leadership. And so I thought that I would really benefit from that. But I will say that probably the greatest influence would be the Bible and just the example of the servant leadership that Jesus displays through the Gospels. I really see both Patty and I as servant leaders, and we really want to take care of the people that work for us and do the very best for them. So I would say that would be my model that has had the greatest influence on me.
For me, I've had the opportunity through the bank to go to a lot of really powerful conferences in the lower 48 where I've had the opportunity to see and hear many leaders. I've seen Bill Clinton, Condoleezza Rice, but the two that really stood out to me from a leadership perspective were Alan Mulally, who left Boeing and went and ran Ford for a few years. His presentation was really insightful and powerful. And the other one, believe it or not, and I'm not a sports person, I couldn't tell you anything about any sports. I don't even know who's playing football right now. But the other leader that I heard that was pretty powerful was Magic Johnson, and that man has an incredible story. And it resonated with me because he supports his community, and that's what I'm about. That's what this bank is about. It's community support, and that's the number one. And what he has done for his childhood hometown is just incredible. If you don't have those opportunities, which many of us haven't had those opportunities, then YouTube is a great resource. They have all kinds of there's TED Talks on there, and there's Magic Johnson has a couple of clips on there, so does Alan Mullally, and I would encourage you to find leaders that resonate with you on those digital resources. There's lots of them. I'm sure there's others than YouTube, but I'm also not much of a internet person, so that's the one that stands out to me. So.
Okay, and then Patty, this question's for you. Tell us about, creating a positive succession plan. I love John Maxwell. He's an author I read, and he says there's no success without a successor. If you're not able to pass the baton, it's a mess. What you've done, can be undone very quickly. So tell us about how to create a positive succession plan, and then what does David do that makes you feel confident about handing him your role as the time moves forward here?
So we were banks are forced often to do things by their regulator, and probably 25 years ago, the FDIC came into the bank and said, you don't have a succession plan, and my predecessor said, we don't need one, we'll figure it out, and that wasn't good enough. So he started a succession plan. It was pretty simple. It just really dealt with what was going to happen with his position when he decided that he was going to move on. So since then, since he did move on and I took over, one of the things that I realized was that really the bank, in order for it to continue to be successful and to be here, my goal is that I want my great-great-great-grandkids to be able to bank at Mount McKinley Bank, because it truly is the best financial institution in this state. But, yeah, I know I'm jaded, so. But, so I looked at our mission statement, and our mission statement really is to provide the best service to our customers. And so based on that, you look around the bank, you look at people who have the different attributes and different strengths, and you're planning not just for the CEO's successor, you're planning for all the senior people, and even every level of management, down to the supervisors. You really need to start identifying people when they're working on the teller line or in loan processing. You need to see what their goals are and how you can develop that person to be better. We're really strong on education and having people take classes at the university or whatever in order to do a better job. But it all comes back to our community and our support for the Fairbanks community. And the reason I believe we're so successful is because we're a mutual bank. We don't have shareholders that we have to pay every year a certain premium for their investment. Everybody who banks with us invests in our bank. And so because of that, I think we've been successful, and I think we have a long, long history. But that's what I try to protect. To me, that's the most important attribute of Mount McKinley Bank. It's better for our bank, it's better for our board, it's better for our employees, it's certainly better for our customers. And so I have, basically I tell people, and it's kind of tongue-in-cheek, but I say, you got to drink the Kool-Aid. You've got to take Mount McKinley Bank and know that if we're going to be successful and permanent, we've got to stay mutual. So Dave has drank the Kool-Aid.
I drowned.
Okay. And so, David, what does Patty do now that you will continue to do? And I'm sure there's a lot, but just a couple things that stand out to you.
You're absolutely correct. There is a lot. One of the things that really impresses me about Patty, especially as a CEO, is just the access that every customer has, that our employees has to her. She's very busy, but yet customers will come by. They just want to say hi. They want to spend some time talking to her, and she is always available to them. And as I always come to sometimes refer myself as Quasimodo, because I'm kind of stuck up in a corner office on the second floor, and I don't really get to interact with customers. a great deal in my position as the chief credit administrator, but my goal is to be able to let people have that kind of access to me. And I think the other thing about Patty is just that she is an incredibly selfless person. And so while a lot of our employees don't get to see some of the things that she does behind the scenes, I do. And I really have she doesn't like this. But I have a tremendous amount of respect for her, and just some of the she's always put that organization first, and I will always endeavor to try to do that as well.
Okay. And then, David, also for you, so most people, even if you look at their entire career, aren't the CEO of a bank or a nonprofit or whatever. Most people lead from the middle somewhere. They might lead a team, they might be a supervisor of a certain shift. And so I'll kind of phrase it because you're kind of in the second chair, but how do you lead when you're not the CEO? How do you lead from the second chair or another chair within the organization?
I think primarily, and this is something that when Patty had, just when I started my role as senior manager and trying to and I was reporting to Patty, was to be the type of employee that I would want to have if I was in her position. And so really trying to lead by example. My official job is the chief credit administrator, but there are so many other jobs that I do in the bank just because I knew if I didn't do them, Patty would do them, and she was already busy enough. And so I also recognize that it also benefits me for my future role to oversee the bank. But I also try to make sure that Patty's never surprised. And so because I spend my days on the second floor and I'm involved in all of the lending of the bank, I want to be a conduit of information to her. And so I always tell my employees, okay, I got to go talk to Patty about this. It's very important for you to make sure that she is well informed so that nothing surprises her. And I just, I think that I'll even just go pick up trash and stuff like that or sand the sidewalks because I want everybody to know that even though I have this position in the bank that I'm not able, I can still do everything else that they might have to do. I don't want to be seen as somebody that's in this lofty place. So I do a lot of things just because I also want people to say, hey, look, if Dave's doing that, I can do that too. And that's helped me develop a pretty good team for maintenance. I oversee the maintenance for the downtown branch. So you'll see me out there shoveling the sidewalks, chipping ice, putting sand down. But it's just part of being an example that, we have other duties assigned. And so I try to live that out.
Okay. And this is a question for both of you. What is a leadership mistake that you've made, and what did you learn from it?
I found this question very hard, and it's not because I don't make mistakes, it's because I've made so many mistakes. And I think that I can't really answer the question because there's not one that stands out. Truly, there have been many. But I would tell you that I don't shy away from making a mistake. I think it's okay to make a mistake. And in our bank, I hope that nobody ever feels like they're going to be unduly chastised. We accept people to make mistakes, and in a bank that generally is going to cost us money, real money, sometimes a lot of money. People don't necessarily fear for losing their jobs if they lose money, but I can remember an employee who gave $10,000 to the wrong customer, and the bank covered it, of course, and that person did not lose their job, but they learned from it. And they felt terrible about it. And, I guess I would say, because they are so numerous, it's okay to make a mistake. Don't fear making a mistake, but learn from it. And I made mistakes early in my career that were due to my youth and naivety, and I learned from them. I think those are the ones that resonate with me more than anything. But, my boss at the time told me, yeah, that makes no sense, but you've learned a valuable lesson here, and that cost the bank a few $100s, which to me was devastating, but it never happened again. So I do tell new supervisors in the bank, and I have some that I'm still trying to get the message across that if their employees make a mistake, don't protect them, don't cover them, but also don't chastise them. They have to learn from their mistakes, and if they don't learn from them, they're going to repeat them, and that's going to eventually cause serious problems. They have to accept that they're not perfect, and then that will help them be better leaders when they get that chance to be a leader, because they've learned from their mistakes and they know how to handle them and how to treat a person who's made a mistake.
Okay. All right. Did you want to?
Well, I think Patty covered it very well. We're in an environment that we're dealing with a lot of people with a lot of different scenarios and different situations. And on the lending side, we have multiple investors on our mortgage side that we have to deal with, and each one of them have their own sets of rules. And mistakes happen, and our goal is that hopefully that through that we can learn, and we see these as opportunities to grow and to learn and to not make them again. But for me, I would say some of the biggest mistakes I've made is not delegating. As Patty and I were talking about this yesterday, when I'm asked to do something, I take it, I do it. Sometimes I have this mindset that I'm the person that has to get it done, and I recognize that doesn't allow those that I work with to be able to have the same opportunities and to grow and to learn, to grow in their positions. And so that's something that I've been working on and trying to delegate some of the work that I do. And now that I'm been promoted to president, the majority of the duties that I have been so used to doing over the last 8 years, I've been having to give those away to other people and let them run with it. And that's I hate to say it, it's been a little bit of a challenge because some of these were my babies that I actually had to develop and work through and to give them over to somebody else to do. But we've got some really good people that we're working with that I think they're going to even do better than I am. And it's neat to see that once they get a chance, the improvements that they make on the work that I've done. And so that just makes our organization that much better.
Okay. The final question I have, and then we'll get to yours. I'll check my phone here. But how do you raise up and develop other leaders? How do you raise up and develop other leaders?
So I really am a strong believer in not micromanaging people, even if nobody's going to do the job exactly the way you do it, and that's okay, because I know I'm not doing the job perfectly. There's always room for improvement. So I try not to micromanage people and let them learn their own way to do things. And sometimes they make mistakes and they come back and they say, doing it your way is the right way. And sometimes they've improved on those processes. And I just think, wow, how come I never thought of that, So not micromanaging them is a big thing for me. And then allowing them to take on additional responsibilities. Dave has asked he asked to do maintenance for the bank. And I said, no, you don't. You don't want to do that. You have more important things to do. And he says, no, I need to know this building inside and out and what's going on in the branches. And I need to know that for my job. So he assembled a team, and they handle the maintenance on the bank. And sometimes I see them out there spreading salt or sand, or sometimes they're shoveling. But most of the time they're calling the right people to do the job. It's just when they need to get the job done quickly that you see them out there doing the hands-on, because they're busy people too. But in a bank our size, we are small enough that you have what we call other duties as assigned. And one of the people that reports to me says, oh yeah, I know. Other duties as assigned, I'll go do it. And so, it's just, we pitch in and we do what has to be done. I'm like Dave. If I see a need on the teller line or anywhere else in the bank and I know I can handle it, then I go take care of it. Because that's just what we do. We try to get the job done.
Okay. Do you want to take a stab at that, or do you want to?
Well, I'll just say that the bank, just alongside with Patty's, we also really, when we identify people that have the qualities that we think will be good leaders within the bank, we will send them to the leadership fairbanks. We try to get them exposed to other leaders in town, build their network of people that they could call on. We also have a very strong priority to try to hire within and to promote people within, so that people feel like they have these opportunities and they want to stick around and work. And I'm really excited to say, during COVID, our turnover rate was almost 50%. I'll take our loan servicing department, for example. It just seemed like every 6 months we were turning everybody over, and Christy, who is our loan servicing manager, was constantly having to train people, and that affected her ability to do her job, and especially a very difficult time. And so the bank took some steps to battle that, and I think this last year we were down under 15% for a turnover rate, which was outstanding. And so people are finding value staying with the bank, and we're excited for that because we've got some fantastic people that work for us, and it's exciting to see people grow in their positions, especially people that thought they may never have these opportunities to grow in an organization like Mount McKinley Bank. I never thought I would someday be the president of a bank, and so it's a little surreal to me, but at the same time, this bank is such an amazing place to work for, and I find that the board and Patty putting their trust in me to see this bank through its next generation of leadership is incredible. And my goal too is that my great grandchildren will be able to still bank at Mount McKinley Bank. So thank you.
Okay. Somebody asked, what's the difference between a mutual bank and another kind of bank? Can you concisely explain that?
Mm-hmm. So a mutual, we are organized for the benefit of the community, number one. We don't have shareholders. So when we first started in 1964, a small group of local businessmen got together and they said, we need to form a mutual bank, because at the time, in the mid-60s, there wasn't an alternative for mortgage lending. They had to go to the Savings and Loan Association that was in town. At that time, national banks did not make mortgage loans. There was no such thing as a mortgage company. And so they had to go to the savings loan that was in town, and they loaded on hefty prepayment penalties. So say you bought your starter home, 5 years later you wanted to move into a larger home, your family's growing for whatever reason, and you would have to pay them, in addition to what you owed them, you'd have to pay them 19-20% prepayment penalty in order to get a new mortgage that also would have a prepayment penalty. So the founders of the bank said this is not right, and so they started collecting. They said, we need to structure a bank, and what's the best bank to have? And a mutual bank won out, because they don't have shareholders requiring them to give them an annual return. It doesn't mean that we can get by without making money, because in order to be a bank in this country, you better make money. Or the regulators will close you. So we have to be successful. We have to be a profitable organization, but we don't have to pay out any of our profits to shareholders. What they did back in 1964 was they got about 100 people to put together $3,000, and that's a tremendous amount of money in today's dollars. I should have looked that up, but it's about $60-some thousand. So they got people to give them $3,000 in 1964 without any guarantee of a return. And fortunately for us, we were successful, and 13 years later, every single one of those people were paid off, and they earned a pretty good rate of 8% return on that money. So it was a pretty successful story. In reality, we're much like a credit union that does not have a shareholder. The difference between a mutual bank and a credit union, really the bottom line is we have any banking power we want, but we also have to pay federal income tax, and a credit union does not pay any federal income tax. So that's the big difference between us and a bank or another type of bank or a credit union.
And if I could add, on the West Coast, there's only 5. So Mount McKinley Bank is very unique on the West Coast. There's a whole bunch back east, but as far as a mutual bank on the West Coast or in the Northwest, we're it.
Okay. Another question is for Patty. Does she have any advice for the younger folks that are starting in a company like she did as a teller and is now the CEO? Maybe what would she have wanted to hear or know then that she did not?
Wow, that's a great question. I guess I've just had some really unique opportunities that I had very supportive bosses, but you really have to make sure that the people that you report to and anybody in management in your company knows what you want to see, what you want to do, that you're willing to take on more responsibility, that you're willing to get education if you need education to do a different job. But you have to, it's on you to make sure they know what your goals are. And I've for years thought, there's no way I'd ever be president or CEO of this bank. There's just no way. Many years, remember 49 years, and I was promoted to president in 2014 and to CEO in 2015. So many years I worked there before I got to that point, but I had so many incredible opportunities, but my bosses all knew what my goals were.
All right. Well, for time, because we do have more questions that were sent to me, but we're going to try to stay on our schedule. But can we give them a hand? Thank you so much. Appreciate it. Just stick it back in. Yeah, just like that. That'll work. All right. Thank you all. Appreciate it. All right. Next up is Dave Dershin, and he is... My daughter and his daughter have been friends for a long time, so I feel like I've known him quite a while. He was the Alaska Principal of the Year. He's over, the school district is facing real challenges, but that doesn't mean that there aren't bright spots and good things happening that are there. All 5 of my kids have gone through the district and had positive experiences. So anyway, Dave's going to come up and he's going to share, kind of a very different field. And this is the beauty of leadership: is leadership happens, in banks, it happens in nonprofits, it happens in school districts, it happens in all kinds of different areas. So if you would welcome Dave, and he'll come on up and share.
Be smarter than the clicker. All right. Hey, so I'm Dave Dershin. I'm the principal at Hutchinson High School. I think that says it up there, right? But as I was making my little slide deck, I could have just as easily put up there that I was a son, a brother, a husband, a father, because, my job doesn't define who I am. It's what I do. I happen to be the principal at Hutchinson High School right now. Derek invited me because I was the 2024 Alaska Secondary Principal of the Year. That was a neat honor for me. I got to go to D.C. and thank you. I got to meet all the principals of the year from all over the country, and let me tell you, that was an amazingly bright room of people. And I'd never been to an event before where you go and you don't know a single person, right? But you've got the principal of the year from every state. And nobody knew anybody, so it was a pretty exciting experience. I sat down at a table with a guy who I later found out was one of the 3 finalists for the National Principal of the Year. He was the Principal of the Year from Michigan, and he'd actually worked here in Alaska somewhere down, Dillingham area, kind of like, so we had good conversations. He was a great guy. He didn't end up winning, but it was intriguing to talk to all these people who are working with so much of the population. So I'm the principal at Hutchinson High School, but as you can guess, that probably wasn't my first job. I don't know about you guys, but my first job, when I was like 11 years old, this guy drove by my house and said, "Hey kid, you want to deliver newspapers?" And I got a job delivering newspapers at 11, and I was really excited because he said, "Come tomorrow afternoon after school," and I thought I was going to be like the kid on the bike with the little thing. No, I was the guy at 4 o'clock in the morning with the push cart of 100 papers in Chicago, and it was a great learning experience for me. I think I made $3 a day, for a couple hours work, which at the time was great. I was 11 years old. That was a lot of money, I did that. I worked in a TV repair shop. I worked at a Burger King. What else did I do? I did lots of different things over the years, I was an assistant hall director in college eventually, and a geologist and a teacher, and et cetera, et cetera. So one thing I have to tell you is, Wayne, I can see the text, but the image got really small. I don't know if that's different or not. Oh, I can see it here. I want you to take a second and I don't know who you're sitting next to, but say hello to the people near you don't know. Introduce yourself, you know. So take a second, say hello to somebody you don't know. If you're sitting next to your wife, that's not the person you need to introduce yourself to. Yeah, right? Very good, very good. Yeah, that's great, Wayne. So, I think it's, yeah. You know, it's important when you go to these kinds of events that you know people around you, you know. I go to conferences all over the place, and, you know, I can just go there and listen to the sessions, but you go when you meet people, you know. So it's important in the world that you meet people and things go on. So the most important person in my world, of course, was my mom, because I was that kid. That was me, right? And I was that kid all the time in every family picture we took. You know, I was that kid. I was that kid at school. I was that kid. You know, I remember in first grade, we were living in New Orleans at the time, and I made a smart aleck remark to the teacher, and she, you know, grabbed me by the ear and walked me to the principal's office and everything. And I remember in freshman year in high school that the algebra teacher used to sit me on his desk, and I didn't know why. I thought it was a really cool honor. No, I was that kid. I was that kid. And which was interesting because it's sort of, I struggled in school. I was pretty pingy. I could do all the content, you know, but I was not one that worked well with the public school system. You know, but my mom always said to me, "You can do anything," which amazed me because I was always in trouble, you know. And when I asked my mom, I said, "Hey, I'm doing a presentation to a leadership conference. What's the first thing I ever did where you said to yourself, hey, that kid could be somebody who gets kids engaged in some direction, positive or negative?" And she mentioned what I'll call you as the trampoline story. So my freshman year of high school, I joined the swimming and diving team. And the year before that, the state of Illinois had outlawed trampolines. And because people had been getting really hurt on them, right? And we used them for swimming and diving with harnesses to practice dives and stuff, but it was very safe. But prior to that, they did trampoline gymnastics, right? You can still see in the Olympics. And these aren't like trampolines like we have now. You see them a dime a dozen in yards. They're round, they have surrounds. But, you know, in the late 70s, nobody owned a trampoline, right? Just people didn't have trampolines. Well, so the high school I went to was going to auction off their trampolines. And I was like, we have to get a trampoline, you know? And so I went to my parents at the time and I said, hey, what do you think about, you know, us getting a trampoline? And of course, my mom said, you're going to kill yourself. And I said, well, okay, but could we get a trampoline, you know? And she said, well, we'll give you $50 if you can get it for $50. And I talked to my friends and we thought there's no way that we're going to get a trampoline for $50. So I got my friends organized and we started lobbying the parents in the neighborhood. Now, back in those days, there were no cell phones, there's no internet. Everybody did stuff outside all the time, you know? So we went and we lobbied, and we got 5 families to all chip in $50, and we had $250, and I think I had $11 in the bank, and a friend had $5, and we got about $275 ready to go to this auction to get this trampoline, this Olympic trampoline, you know? And so we went there, and we got to the auction, and they were auctioning off 4 trampolines. And we ended up walking away with a Nissan Olympic trampoline for $50 total, right? These are like, they were $2,500 back then. And this thing lived in our backyard and other kids' backyards, and it created this wonderful neighborhood experience. And my mom said that she thought, oh, I'm going to be a leader who's not going to go to jail, because she wasn't sure what direction I was going to lead when I was younger. And do some good things. And so it was a wonderful thing for the neighborhood, you know, kept everybody out of trouble, and I was very hyper, and I get to jump up and down all day long, which was great for my mother. So anyway, eventually got out of high school. It took me a little longer than most because I was not on the best of terms with teachers for the most part, and got out of high school, spent a year working actually as a pharmacy technician. I took a gap year and worked as a pharmacy tech, and then decided to go to college. I went to college, got a geology degree, and something hit me, and I decided I didn't want to be a geologist. I really wanted to work with people, you know. I didn't know that geologists work with people. I thought geologists just work with rocks, you know. I probably should have worked in IT because I'm very good at tech stuff, but again, at that time I thought if you worked in IT, you just worked with machines, you didn't work with people. So I decided to become a teacher. And in 1992, I went in, this is me when I still had hair. And my very first day as a teacher, my mom took a proud picture of me. And I remember going off to work and working my tail off, coming home completely exhausted. And then waking up the next morning really excited about my job. So I picked the right field. You know, I got to work with kids, and it was where I really wanted to be. Now, I was young. I think I was bright. I was fairly naive, right? We were all naive when we were younger. And I was the kind of guy who would say, wouldn't it be neat if, and I just start off in a direction really and build the plane in the air as we were going. I was that kind of guy, you know, a lot of stuff from the hip back then. But after many years of teaching, I taught in Chicago for a couple of years. My wife and I got married. We moved up here. I taught up here for many years at Tanana and then at Lathrop High School. Then I decided I want to become a principal. Now, when you guys think of principals, you think of some specific principles that you've been exposed to over the years from different movies. This is my favorite. Miss Trunchbull's my favorite. And then, of course, the Lean on Me, you know. This is what you think of as principals. I didn't have this vision as a principal, you know. My first job, I was assistant principal at North Pole High School, and I really wanted to be there because I was a struggling kid, and I became a teacher so I could help kids, right? Which helps the families, which helps the community. My first assistant principal job was at North Pole High School, and it was wonderful. I was able to influence teachers and how they worked with students in such a way that I felt students were benefiting. I ended up moving back to Lathrop as an AP. I became a principal at Lathrop in 2011 and then moved over to Randy Smith Middle School in 2014. And it's been a wonderful experience. I spent 10 years at Randy Smith, and this year I moved over to Hutchinson High School. And I tell you this because, you know, I'm a helper by nature. If you ask me for help, I'm the guy, I'm going to jump in, right? That's what I like to do. I like to solve complex problems. I'm a pleaser, which when I started as an administrator was not a good thing because I thought my job as a principal was to make sure everybody was happy all the time. And that wasn't really very effective, let me tell you. I have great tech skills. I'm good at data analysis. I'm a bit of a workaholic, and I'm reflective in that I beat myself up about how I'm doing my job all the time, you know? I'll admit I'm not a great listener. I'm working on it every day. You know, I work with my staff on it, and as I'm doing these listening things with my staff, I think to myself, this is really for me, so I can be a better listener, you know? I thought I'd be a good leader coming in as a principal, and again, that my job was to do it all. I heard that from you guys here, right? Sometimes you go and you think, I'm the boss, I have to do everything. And you try to do everything, and you think that any problem that comes up is your fault, and every decision that you make has to be perfect, you know? And I'll tell you, I struggled in some aspects of being a leader, but, and then I moved over to Randy Smith for a change, and I thought, okay, this is gonna be great, I'm gonna have a fresh start, but my dad has this saying that you probably heard, because that's not what happened, you know, and his saying, oh, my slides are out of order. That's okay, we'll go through this. So his saying that you probably heard is that, you know, we make plans and God laughs. And I say that because in 2014, I moved over to Randy Smith to be the principal over there, and I was there about a month. I went out hunting with a friend of mine. You may know Andy Ekblad. He and I went out hunting with his daughter. And I found a moose shed, just, you know, moose antlers sitting on the ground. I went to pick them up with my right hand, and I couldn't hold the moose antlers in my hand. And I didn't know what was going on because I'm right-handed, so I had to carry with my left hand. I thought, well, maybe I did something with my elbow. I don't know, you know. And I got home that next night, and I said to my wife, you know, something's up with my hand. I don't know what's going on. And I got in the shower and realized I could not feel the hot water in my hand. And I thought, oh, this is bad. So with my health insurance, you have to start everything at the clinic. So I went to the clinic, and at the clinic, they said to me, hey, we think you're having a stroke. You need to go to the hospital. And I said, so is that an ambulance thing? They said, oh, no, just drive over there. So I said, okay, and I had my kid with me, and I'm like, okay, I'm gonna drive over to the hospital, and I go in the ER. I'm like, they think I'm having a stroke, and they rush me back, and I'm not having a stroke. So they did a CAT scan and everything on me, and turns out that I had a small tumor inside my spinal cord, way up in the top of my back, right? I was just gonna be a principal that year. I didn't plan for any of this stuff, you know. So that was a Saturday night. I have a friend who's a doc in town. They got me in Sunday morning to look at the MRI scan with a tech and confirm what it was. Monday, I started looking for doctors, and I found a guy at the Mayo Clinic who teaches people how to do this surgery. I said, that's the guy. That's the guy I'm going to. So I go to the Mayo Clinic. We have an appointment with them on Wednesday. We have appointments on Thursday, on Friday. And if you ever have major medical issues, Mayo Clinic was amazing. Not that I want to be there again, but it was amazing. So I end up at the Mayo Clinic. The following Monday, I have surgery. And I don't remember the surgery, obviously, but I remember must have been out of the recovery room, and they're like wheeling me down the hall back into my room. And just as I get to the room, my wife says, "How are you doing?" And being me, I make a joke. I said, "No roller derby, you know." And then I looked down and I wiggled my toe. Because one of the discussions we'd had before going to surgery was that there was a 50% chance I wouldn't walk again, you know? And you can see I'm walking, pretending, right? So that was a Monday. We spent a week or so in that room there, sort of recovering. And then they moved me to a physical therapy floor. It was a neuro recovery physical therapy floor where most of the people there had been in motorcycle accidents, broken spines, broken necks, all that kind of stuff. Something that I realized as I got back to, when I laid down in bed after the surgery, I couldn't feel anything below my neck. And your world is really different when you can't feel anything. It just felt like this body was floating, you know? So they moved me to physical therapy floor, so rehab. And Sunday we go in and they do all these tests and I squeeze things and try to use my legs and they measure if I have any strength and stuff. And Monday, I went in there and I met with the occupational therapist and she said, "Hey, we better go shopping for a wheelchair. You're gonna need a wheelchair." And I thought to myself, oh, I'm gonna live in a wheelchair. This is gonna be a really different life. I'm not really planning on that. My wife said, we're not doing that, you know? And so there's nothing wrong with being in a wheelchair, but I was pretty lucky in that. So Monday they said, "You're going in a wheelchair." Tuesday I was walking with a walker. My wife made me do laps on the floor in the walker. I must have walked, I don't know, a few hundred feet that day, right? And I go to PT the next day, and they said, "Well, you're walking with a walker. Maybe you can get by with a walker instead of a wheelchair." I said, "That's awesome." I said, "Do you have trekking poles?" You know? Well, this was 10 years ago, almost 11 years ago now, and they didn't know what trekking poles were back then. They said, "What's that?" I said, like trekking poles, you're hiking? You know, and here we are in the middle of Minnesota. Rochester, Minnesota is urban. They don't know what trekking poles are. But they had these tall sticks that somebody had brought in, and I walked around with some sticks. I said, "I can do this." And then Thursday morning, the occupational therapist said to me, "Hey, what about a cane?" I said, "I could walk with a cane. I bet I could do that." You have to realize I still can't feel my body at this time. I learned that the back of your spine and the front of your spine, there's sensation, and the sides are motion, and my motion still worked, right? And so I can't feel my feet, except like Wednesday morning as I'm walking down the hall, I'd like feel my tendons stretch in my feet. And so that became touch. I still don't feel the floor, right? What I feel are my tendons stretching, and that's touch to me. So anyway, Thursday they gave me a cane. My wife and I went out the door and I walked a mile with a cane. So that was Thursday. Yeah. We were there Friday night. We went out for dinner. And Saturday we flew home to Fairbanks and got back to Fairbanks. And my world was very different, right? I could walk with a cane. I couldn't feel my feet, couldn't feel my legs. Starting to feel some of my torso now. It's been a few weeks since surgery. And for the first time in my life, there we go. For the first time in my life, I have to learn to rely on people, right? I was used to being the principal where I was the person everybody relied on all the time. And now I'm going back to a job where, the first 6 weeks, I was back in town. I didn't go to work. And then after that, I went back 6 weeks, went back part-time. I'd be there part-time and realized that there's not a lot I can do alone. I can't even get to work, can't drive. So physically I can't get there. I can't run around the building and help solve problems and work with challenging students all day. There's a lot of things I had to do. I really had to start relying on the people at my school. I got exhausted by noon. I'd often lay down on my floor and then go back home, So it was interesting, and one of the things that I had to learn to do was to slow down, right? My world was totally different. I had been sort of a speedy brain, pingy, kind of all over the place person, and I had to learn how to slow down physically and in my communication style, you know? I became much more aware of how my actions affected other people. Now, as a principal, you should, know this, but everybody's got a learning curve. Nobody knows it right away, and so you learn it as you go. I really started to better understand how to motivate people and influence those around me, And what I really learned was that what I needed to do was not tell them what to do. I needed to empower them to make decisions and to delegate. David talked about delegating. Delegating is a huge piece, and when you're in charge, it's important that you delegate. And when you delegate, you either explain it well enough that you're going to get what you want, or you let the product that they create be their product and let it go. And so that was new for me as a supervisor, to delegate something to somebody, and it came out different than I expected, and be like, okay, we're going to go with that, because I didn't have the energy or anything to work with that. The other thing that happened for me is that I changed my communication style, and I had always been a very curious person, but sometimes I also was very challenging in the way I communicated with people. Not in a manner to be a pain, but I was curious and I wanted to challenge ideas all the time. And as a leader, as a supervisor, I really had to do more questioning for engagement with my employees. Again, not to challenge them, but to better understand, right? And I really started living by this. Ted Lasso didn't exist, obviously, but be curious, not judgmental. And so often people ask questions, and then they start thinking about their response to the person's answer, or they want to prove somebody wrong, or sometimes it's really interesting just to hear people's ideas and let them really flesh those out, because you can learn a lot from that. One of the things I do, and I've done, since I don't know if I did it before or not, but since the surgery for sure, I do what I like to call micro conversations. And so if you're a supervisor of people, there's the job aspect of what you do, and then there's the whole relationship aspect of what you need to do. And you need to build relationships with all of your employees, or your peers, or your supervisor, or your students if you're a teacher, in such a way that they know that you care about them, and you need to understand things about their world that's not just their job, right? I work with teachers. Some are science teachers, math teachers, technology. Now we're at Hutch, I've got welders and shop teachers and all sorts of things. But I need to know who they are and what they're like, so I know how to motivate them, So I'm going to ask you to turn to your neighbor again here in a second, all right? And you're going to ask them a question, but your job is just to listen, right? We're going to take a minute, and you're going to ask them a question, then we're going to switch, and they're going to ask you a question, and your job is just to respond, and they're just going to listen. They're not giving you any feedback. Now, I have some questions here if you can't think of a question. These are simple questions. I'd like you not to ask the question to somebody you came here with today. So you may have to turn around a bit. So take a minute, ask them a question, let them respond, and when you think they're done, they can ask you a question, you'll respond. So go ahead and do that real quick. Again, not the person you came with. I'm already 25 minutes in. Okay, by now you should have your second person. By now your second person should be answering the question. Yeah. Hey, so by now you should be having your second person ask their question. You should be almost done with your second person's response. All right, I hate to cut you guys off. Can we get right back in? Once you get everybody talking, you know, it's hard to bring people back. All right, so you guys are good at talking to each other. Congratulations. So, you know, it's an important skill, and, you know, I am aware that I don't have great listening skills, and, you know, I think about people's listening skills and communication skills. And I think, you know, as I slowed down after my surgery, I became a better listener. There's about 10,000 different diagrams about listening skills. But, you know, the things that I think about that are really important, does this have a pointer on it? I don't think so. You know, paying attention and not thinking about your response, right? If you really are asking a question, you want to know what they think. So let them tell you what they think, whether you agree with it or not. You know? And if they really say something you disagree with, ask them a more in-depth question so you better understand why they have a different opinion than you. You know? Withhold your judgment. Now, obviously, if you're a supervisor and they're doing something really inappropriate, that's a different situation. But for the most part, when we're talking about dialogues, it's important that you understand. Another important thing here, this says summarize here. There's specific reflective language. If you struggle with listening skills, you might, you know, jump on YouTube, jump on the web. There's lots of things about the importance of how to engage a conversation so you're not trying to one-up the person as you have that discussion, right? I do this with employees all the time. Kids stink at it. Kids are terrible at it. They always want to tell a better story, you know, right? But, so you throw in summaries. Somebody tells you about their hunting trip, so you don't have to summarize the whole thing, but you throw in key words like, wow, sounds like you had a great hunting trip. And then you talk about what you want to do, which lets them know you heard everything they said, right? It builds phenomenal relationships. You know, I had a set of second questions. I think you did a great job talking. We don't need to practice that again, you know. Active listening, though, is a really important skill set. My son has a new job at college. He got a job as a bartender down there, right? And he calls me up, and he's really nervous about what's he going to talk with people about? I said, just come up with 5 questions. You're not going to see these people every day, right? Just come up with 5 questions that are good, engaging questions to start dialogues. If you struggle with those kind of things, and a lot of people do these days with cell phones, you know, come up with some questions that you can ask people. And when they answer the question, don't start telling them something. Ask them a more in-depth question. Really engage them. When you ask people questions, it shows them that you care. So I move around the building, I do these micro conversations, I ask people questions about their weekends, I talk to students about their weekends, right? I'm definitely a manager, we do the other side of the important thing of the job as well, but the relationship is really powerful. And the term that I like to use when I talk with teachers about their ability to do different things is I talk about their skill set, and specifically I call it their toolbox, which works really well at Hutch. But in other schools, I've always done that, you know? And everybody has their toolbox of skills. You know, before I had my surgery, I was great at IT stuff. I was good at problem solving. I'm pretty good at being decisive, making decisions. I can adapt, I can innovate. And the things that I learned, right, that I added to my toolbox was more communication skills with intentional language. And I like to provide actionable feedback. If you've never heard the term actionable feedback, it means when something needs to be fixed or addressed, that you give somebody a specific action that they can make to change their behavior, can change how they're doing their job, instead of saying, hey, I think you're struggling there, and saying, have a good day, you know? Or great job is really not helpful to anybody, you know? So I really learned how to use actionable feedback to motivate employees, to work with students. And the neat thing is that I model it with staff, and staff then in turn use that same technique with their students. And I talk with them about, do you provide actionable feedback to your students? Do you tell them how to improve their writing? Do you tell them how to solve this problem or weld better or whatever they're doing, you know? The other thing, I became more sensitive. I became more empathetic. You know, everybody knows what somebody with a broken leg looks like with a cast, right? But do you know what somebody looks like when they've had a tumor in their spinal cord? They look like this. You don't know, right? They might get up and walk around. They might stand up and they walk around like they're 90 years old for a couple of minutes because their legs don't work. I sing in the gospel choir at the festival every summer, and there's a guy who's always standing in the back, and I don't know why. He likes to stand up, and I'm guessing he's got something going on in his world that he has to manage and deal with, you know? And these are our employees. These are people who come work for us. They have things that happen in their lives that we don't know about. And some people will come in your office if you're a supervisor, and they'll tell you all about it. And some people just like, I need a month off, I've got a situation. And they won't tell you a word, and you'll be like, okay. But you need to be aware that they've got some challenges going on that can affect how they do their job, you know? I learned how to delegate better. Prior to the surgery, I would delegate and then micromanage, which drives everybody crazy. So now I'm much better at delegating and then letting it be theirs. And if I need some specific things in it, I'll say, hey, listen, I need these things, please check back with me, and we'll make sure these things are in place. But I really hand it off. I've done a much better job of that. I also learned how to prioritize, and I don't mean day-to-day tasks, I mean life, right? Here I was in a situation where I could have died and maybe didn't walk, and I've got a teacher complaining about we're out of paper, right? That to me is a minor situation, easy to solve, but it means that when I leave work, I'm with my family, and I spend that time with my family. And I build in and schedule time for myself to exercise, and I build in time for myself to spend time with family, because nobody's gonna die and say, God, I'm glad I worked so much in my life, right? Not that we don't work hard, but you really have to balance things, and I think I did a good job at that after my surgery, because it reminded me, you know, just don't sweat the small stuff. And most of the stuff is the small stuff. I don't know if you've ever found yourself arguing about little tiny things. You know, my wife and I practice arguing. You know, we don't really argue. But sometimes I'm like, why are we fighting about this? You know, this is really an irrelevant thing. And, you know, as leaders, I try to live that, and I try to model that for my employees. So, you know, we talked about this toolbox of skills, and you think about your employees. What skills do they have, right? You've hired them to do something. Do they have the skills to do it? I come in as a new principal in a school, and I have to assess everybody's ability to do their job, right? What skills and tools do they have? Are they missing skills? Do I need to help them sharpen some skills? Do I need to send them for training? Do I need to bring them in and say, hey, this really isn't working, and adjust where we're going, you know? And as a leader and as a manager, it's very helpful, and people appreciate it if you help them work on skills that they struggle with, you know? Some people will have toolboxes full of stuff, and some people will have empty toolboxes. They just come in like, teach me, I know nothing, you know? And it's important to know that. The one place this is interesting is that sometimes we assume when people don't do their jobs well, we assume they don't want to do their jobs well, right? You really have to assume positive intentions. I've been an administrator now like 18 years. I fired 3 or 4 people in 18 years. Most people want to do their jobs well. They really do. They're like, I want to be a great teacher. I want to be a great carpenter. I want to be a great salesman, barista, whatever they're doing. Nobody says I want to be terrible at it. And so if things aren't working, we need to assume positive intentions. They're there to do their job well. That includes customers. My customers are my students, right? And sometimes customers come into businesses or they come into schools and they don't know how to get anything, so they yell at you. Well, that's their only tool, right? It's the only tool they have, and they don't have any other abilities to advocate. But if you assume positive intentions and assume that they're trying to advocate for their kids or get a better coffee or an interest rate or whatever they're doing, and that's the only tool they have, it helps you better understand them. I think I'm out of order on my slides, but we'll get there. Sometimes, you know, we ask staff to do a job and they don't have the right tool, and they do what they can with the tool they have, and hopefully we can teach them what a hammer is, right, if they're knocking a nail in or something like that. Again, as leader, I help them sharpen and learn those skills that they're going to need to do their job successfully. Some people don't have the skills, and they're not bad people because they don't have the skills, they just don't have the skills. I'm going to skip through that, sorry. So here's a thinking piece for you. You're not going to talk to anybody, but think about what you do, whether you're a student or a stay-at-home parent or you're whatever you do. In your world, do the people who work with you or live with you, do they have the skills, the toolbox to be successful at what they're doing? Just think about the people that work with you for a second. If you're a parent, that might be your kids, right? If you're a supervisor, it might be your employees. If you're somebody who's in the mix of everything, it's your peers, you know. So then how do they respond when they're missing some of these tools, right? How do your peers or your supervisor or your employees, how do they respond differently when they're missing some of those skills? If they don't have them, they don't have them. They don't just magically like buy them out of a bucket. You know, they have to learn these things, and you have to either have experience or somebody has to take you and say, hey, this is how we do this in this job, in this situation. This is how we raise children. This is how you say no to your kid when they ask for the cell phone, right? Whatever the skill is, you know. And then the third thing to think about is, okay, how do you as a person respond when your peer, your supervisor, your employee, when they're missing those tools? What do you do? Does it drive you crazy? Do you make assumptions about their abilities based on the fact they're missing some skills, right? I work in public education right now, and I'm not sure why people aren't going into school to be teachers, because it's a phenomenal career, and it helps the community and helps the society. And but I'm hiring teachers who haven't been trained as teachers. They know how to do math, or they know how to be carpenters, and we have to teach them how to be teachers. And I have to assume they want to be a great teacher, and we have to work with them on those skills every day, you know. And then this trust piece, right? You have to assume positive intentions in the people you work with. Again, I can't count on one hand the number of people who come to work and say, I want to be terrible at my job. I know people who come in and they're bored in their job and they don't like their job, but you really have to trust them and assume positive intentions when they are coming to you, especially if they're customers. Because customers don't know your systems, they don't know your people, they don't know your language sometimes, you know, they don't understand the acronyms. I know anytime I interact with military parents, they throw like 12 acronyms out at me, and I say, okay, back up, please tell me what that means, because I don't know, right? So, what about yourself? It's a reflective piece. What about yourself? What tools do you need in your toolbox for whatever you do? Whatever you do, what tools, what skill sets do you need in your career, in your business, in your whatever you do? I mean, think about that. I mean, everybody in here does different things. If you're a student, you have a different skill set than if you're a teacher, than if you're a banker, than if you're a lawyer, than if you're whatever, right? And then think about what your best tools are. Probably those are the first few things that you thought about when we talked about your skills and your strengths, right? My strength is that I'm creative and I can think divergently, which doesn't mean I can always come down to one idea, all right? And then this is the most important piece. What tools of yours need some sharpening? And I ask you not to be afraid of those things. Those are the things that you need to think about and be very deliberate about your actions. When I think about my ability to engage and listen and questioning techniques when I talk to people, I have to be very deliberate in my language. I have to think to myself, first of all, you know, this is a 10-year-old, this is an adult. How do I communicate with them? Do I use different types of language to different people, right? If this is a young child, you don't speak to them the same way you do to a 40-year-old, right? So you have to be very deliberate. And if you know what, I'm really bad at blank, then that's the thing you should work on. And try to set yourself up in situations where you get chances to practice those things. And you can say, listen, I'm not good at this, but I'm trying it, so please work with me, right? Or you can say, I need help at this. There's nothing wrong with that. Those are good things to be able to say. This is a funny one. I don't say a funny one because I would say this is customer service skills, but I think these are skills we need to work with people in the world. I took a group of kids over to the Pipeline Training Center, and they talked all about all the different things they can teach them, the how to run this piece of equipment, how to weld, how to do that. but they said communication skills is the place that people are lacking in this country right now. They don't know how to communicate that clearly. They just do this little click, click, click. I don't know about you guys, but I send my son a text and he says, yep, right? Right? Listening skills, self-control, positive attitude, assertiveness. Assertiveness is important. If something's going awry, sometimes you have to be very direct with somebody and say exactly what you think, even if they may not like what you're going to say. Sometimes you have to do that, right? The other one is taking responsibility. You know, nobody likes a finger pointer. Nobody likes somebody who says, well, the team wasn't doing well because of Sharon, right? Or Dave. People don't like that. Instead of saying, you know what, I think we all need to work together better because I think we weren't communicating well on this team, and I own some of that, right? And as a leader, when you're modeling these skill sets, because these cross every job, every family, whatever, right? When you make mistakes, you need to say, hey, you know what? Hey, guy, I really apologize for that hammer I gave you that was broken, whatever, you know? Take responsibility is a huge, important piece, right? Conflict resolution, learning how to apologize, like genuinely apologize. Not just say, oh, I'm sorry about that, you know, and move on, or write a, hey, I'm sorry about that text message, you know, or email. Go up and look somebody in the eye and say, wow, you know, last week I was running late and I'm really sorry I left the staff lounge messy and that won't happen again. You know, a genuine, this is relationship building stuff that goes across any business. We're going to skip that for a second. So I want to show a couple of things because this is a book that I read, and as a leader, I told you I was a pleaser, right? Which means when somebody comes up to me and says, hey, I've got this problem, I would always say, hey, let me help you fix it. Well, eventually I'm piled up with everybody else's problems because they're like, great, here's my problem, and they walk away, right? This is a neat little book. It's a short read. It's called Shifting the Monkey. Todd Whitaker writes mostly educational stuff, but it again transfers anywhere. So now when somebody comes to me with a problem, my first response is, wow, let me know how that goes, right? If they get in deep, they'll come back to me. But as a leader, don't think that you have to take responsibility for everybody's problems all the time. It's not something you need to do, all right? And then last thing we're going to skip through this here too. Sorry. Last thing I want to remind you about is this. If you're a leader, or even a leader within a group of people, remember that, you know, leadership is not about power, it's about empowering others. And I think people who work in certain industries know this. People who work in social service organizations, churches, blah, 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 they know that this is all what it's all about. They work in schools. You know, sometimes in businesses, you think that it's not about empowering people, it's about you making decisions and being the person in charge, you know. And you're going to wear yourself out, and it doesn't work very well for very long. So this is an important thing to think about. And that's pretty much what I've got today. So,
all right.
That was long.
You can go ahead and sit down. Thanks so much. We appreciate that.
Thanks.
Yeah, we're going to keep moving to try to stay on schedule. So Donald Burgess is up next, and he is the CEO of the Chamber of Commerce, which is a wonderful organization here in town. They do a lot of great work. You already heard David Durham mention their leadership development program that they run, Leadership Fairbanks. I don't know if he's going to mention that at all, but if you want to give a little plug for that, you certainly can. It's something I've gone through, and I think it's a great program. Jeff Welsh ran it for one of our interviewees for several years. So anyway, let's welcome Donald. Come on up and have him share. Thanks, man.
Thank you.
Okay. Is that gonna?
Am I good?
Yeah.
Yep.
There you go.
All right, nice. Thanks, Pastor Derek, for that introduction, and good morning, everyone. It's wonderful to be with you this morning. As we wait for my slides to come up. That's fine. I work with technology for many years, I understand. Who said that? Do you play? If you play, I'll sing. Guitar. Anybody does the piano? I'm really not good without the music, but if you do give me some music, I'll sing. So, while we wait, let's do some preamble. So, I've been in Alaska now for almost 7 months. Got here in July. As Pastor Derek said, I work with the Chamber of Commerce. I am the CEO. I'm coming to Alaska from the great state of Florida, sometimes known as the Sunshine State. So driving here this morning, with the conditions of the road as they are, I kind of wished I was back there. But guess what? People in Florida are complaining about how cold it is right now. Yeah, they have the heavy coats out and the boots and everything because of the cold front that has been affecting the southeast. Almost good? All right, no worries. All right. Well, Leadership Fairbanks, gonna be honest, I'm just into my first year with that program. What it does is it develops the leadership potential of the residents of Fairbanks. It's a 9-month program run by the Chamber of Commerce. We contract with facilitators to run that program for us. It runs from September through to May each year. The registration process usually starts in August. My intention is to start in July of this year. One of the things I'm contemplating is a little revamp of the program as it is, because right now it doesn't expose the participants to Fairbanks and what it is to be a leader in Fairbanks. It's really just a general leadership program in its present form. So I want participants to know how is the city and the borough governed? What are the major institutions that are here in Fairbanks? What does the Chamber of Commerce do? Is that something anyone here can answer? Not too sure, but when my participants go through the next iteration of Leadership Fairbanks, these are questions that I'm expecting that they'll be able to answer when they graduate. I'm guessing we're almost there. Is it good to go up here? I'm not seeing anything, nothing on the laptop, but that's fine. What I'll do is, and I apologize, folks, from time to time I'll just look around to see what's on the screen. So, who am I? We have a little bit of that already. My name is Donald Burgess, as we said before, and I bring this line first because this line is most important to me. I'm a son, husband, father. I know I look a bit young, but I'm also a grandfather and brother. So family means a lot. Family, to me, is the most important. And then these next ones are in no particular order of importance. So I'm a coach and a mentor. I'm an athlete. I started running when I was about 17, 18 years old. I also cycle, I hike, I play tennis. I do a number of things. When I'm not working or outdoors doing something, you might find me in the kitchen people say I'm a good cook. Some people say I'm a chef. And out of that, I became a writer because people wanted to know, well, how can we do the dishes that you prepare the way that you do it? So 3 years ago, I published my first book. I'm a Jamaican, so I'm coming to you from Florida, but originally I'm from Jamaica. I've been living in the US since 2007, so that's 17 years now. President and CEO of the Greater Fairbanks Chamber of Commerce. Started that job in July, and even though it's cold here, folks, I'm happy to be in Alaska, and I'm enjoying my time with the Chamber of Commerce. This one I didn't know about, but my wife accuses me of being a team builder. And when I reflect upon her words, I think it's true. So today, these are the things I want to address. Understanding what it means to build a team, the benefits of team building, the key elements of successful team building strategies. We're going to look at how we overcome some of the challenges of working with a team and building a team. I may have a few case studies if we have time that I can go through with you, and also if there's time, Q&A. So, first of all, some definitions. What is a team? Group of individuals that have come together to achieve a common purpose or a common goal. And that's, as I thought about the program here today, those are the words I put together as my definition of what a team is. If we understand what a team is, then what is team building? It's getting those groups of persons, or the process of causing those group of people to work together effectively. I apologize. So it's not just bringing people together for a common goal, but getting them to effectively achieve that common goal. We could put any group together and say, hey, this is what we want you to do. And they'd probably achieve it, no doubt. But it works better if we're all on the same page, we understand exactly what the goal is and how to get there in the most efficient way. So this essentially is what team building is about. All right, so I'm gonna introduce you to the Sunshine Striders. This is a group that I started back in 2023. So here we're talking about team building in the workplace, but team building can work across any situation. And these are a group of people who decided that they'd like to spend Saturday mornings with me while I taught them how to run. That was the initial intent. And as the months went by, it wasn't really about running. What we found is that we were building a community. And the intention became, well, how can I change my lifestyle so that I'm living a healthier life? So that became the end goal of these people who would wake up before dawn each Saturday to spend 2 hours with me. This picture was taken after one of our races. I believe it was a little more than a year ago, back in Florida. And we're going to come back to these Sunshine Striders a little bit more in the presentation, but I just wanted to give you a brief introduction. So what are some of the benefits of team building? When you can bring those group of people together to work effectively, you're going to find that there's improved communication, one. there are a number of improvements you'll find. There's going to be increased productivity because they're now working as one unit, not just individuals. And so productivity increases. Morale is also going to increase. That group of people I showed you in the previous slide, they each have different abilities. Some are complete beginners, some are advanced runners, and some are intermediate runners. But what you find is they all cheer each other. It doesn't matter what your level of competence is. They're there, nobody's there to compete against any other person. They're there to encourage each other to be better individuals, live that healthier lifestyle, as we spoke about earlier. In the workplace, when you have effective team building, you're going to find reduced turnover. And I didn't add it here, but you also find that there is increased loyalty. So Sunshine Striders are back. Let's take this young man, first row, extreme left. His name is Moses. During one of our sessions, I gathered some of these members of the group, those that I thought who could do the exercise that I was about to have them go through. And we started off running. Single file, running around one of the parks in South Florida. And what I did was have the lead person change after every 2 minutes. That kept it interesting. If there was a point where somebody said, look, I need to slow down a bit, maybe walk, the group would stop, we'd walk a few minutes, then start running again. When it was over, and I always encourage all these runners to have what we call a heart rate monitor, which not just monitored your heart rate, but also could tell the distance that you ran. Moses looked at his watch, his heart rate monitor, and he saw that he had run 5 miles. He got very emotional. He said, I've never done that before. This is one of the things, as a team leader, as a coach, you have to identify the potential in the individuals that make up the team. If I had said to Moses, today I want you to run 5 miles, he would have said, I can't do it. I've never done it before. But having seen him operate for 5-6 months, I knew that he had it in him. So I took that group, we did that run. He was surprised. He never knew that he had it. But having done it that morning, he realized he was much better than he thought he was before. I can also take the young lady behind him. That's Kirby. Kirby worked with me for maybe 4 years in an office setting. There was a point early in that 4 years where we had a work dilemma, and I needed someone to step up and take responsibility in 2 departments. I chose her because I saw that she had the potential. She didn't want to let me down, but she was very nervous about doing what I was asking her to do. I said to her, Kirby, don't worry about it because I'm giving you the responsibility, but I'm not leaving you to handle it on your own. I'm going to be right beside you every step of the way. With that assurance, she took the job on. A year later, when we had done, and that job was at another Chamber of Commerce. If you know Chambers of Commerce, we not only advocate for the business community, but we also organize a lot of events. So following one of our very big events, Kirby and I sat in my office, and we debriefed. And I said, Kirby, that event was very well done. Good job. Congratulations. And we had a very long conversation, started looking into what to do the following year, because this is one of the things, I never just stop with the individuals on my team and say, good job, you've reached the pinnacle. Now you're good. You don't need to improve or anything. I'm always trying to get people to be better than what they are right now. So we started looking at, well, what can we do to make it better the next time around? But when the conversation ended, and as she was leaving my office, she said to me, and I always get emotional when I think about this, thank you for trusting me. Because there were people who were telling me that I was going to fail. And that really meant a lot. I saw the potential, and even while I was seeing that, people were telling her that she could not do it. I also remember when I met with one of my board members and told them, this is what I'm doing to deal with the situation that the business is facing right now. He said to me, that's not gonna work. So sometimes when you are a leader, you have to deal with all kinds of oppositions to the decisions that you're making, especially when you're leading a team. You find that you have this responsibility to ensure that the people who report to you feel that sense of trust, that even though they may not feel confident that they can accomplish what you're asking them to do, as the coach, as the mentor, it's your job to move them from this level to the next. So what are some of the key elements of team building? You have to discuss clear goals. It's very important that everybody is on the same page. So we talk about me working at Chamber of Commerce, and I believe if I ask 10 people in here, what's a Chamber of Commerce, what does a Chamber of Commerce do, I get 10 different answers. And it's the same thing with the members of the team who work inside the Chamber of Commerce. Each person has a different responsibility. And what I found early in my career is that it's necessary that everybody who works in the business understands what the mission and the goals of the business are. So it's very important that the team understands the goal. Trust and collaboration, which we spoke about earlier, trust. But collaboration is also important, especially between team members. Collaboration, the active sharing of ideas and experiences. Once you can get individuals in a team to start communicating with each other to achieve that goal of collaboration, that's a huge step. Collaboration leads to so many other things. It leads to trust between the team members. Diversity and inclusion, something that's mentioned quite a lot in many different circles, but here I'm not talking about gender or race or nationality or anything like that. In a team, what we need to consider and appreciate is that there are individuals who have come with their own personalities and they have different points of view. So we need to be open to hearing what each team member has to contribute, whether it's a sport team or a workplace team or any other kind of team out there. And the same thing with inclusion. We're all different. We all need to feel as if our contribution matters. And that's what I mean by inclusion. Everybody needs to feel as if they're included in decision-making processes, anything that has to do with achieving the goals of the organization. Another key element is that the team leader needs to appreciate that he or she is a coach and is a mentor. Like I mentioned before, you have to be the one to bring out the best in people. That becomes your job. Sometimes people they can be their own motivator, but they will appreciate it when you come to them and say, hey, I think you can do this. I want to point you to this level so that we can start achieving more as a group, as an organization. So team leader, coach, mentor, big job bringing out the potential that we see in people. And, okay, my favorite group. Here we are again. Young lady beside Kirby. Her name is Rachel. Came to me about 4 years, maybe 3.5. Shortly before I left Florida, I overheard a conversation with Rachel and someone else from outside of the organization. They were telling her about a vacancy in another company and saying that they thought that she would be a good fit. If you know the chamber business, you know that we are not-for-profit. We do not earn a lot of money. Our employees don't get paid a very high wage. I didn't hear the rest of the conversation, but a few days later I said to Rachel, look, I know that I can't pay you what you're worth. Your contribution to this business is very valuable to me, but if there's something else out there that you want to pursue, please don't be afraid to do so. She said to me, yeah, I know I'm not getting paid as much as I should, but the reason why I stay with this job is because of you. So one of the things that team building will generate is a sense of loyalty. Your team becomes loyal to you. And with that kind of sense of loyalty, they're not looking outside to see what might be better. They're looking inside to see how they can make this organization. I feel as if my voice isn't, is it still working? Okay, good. To see how they can contribute to the organization's success. And going back a little bit to understanding team building, the strength of the team is each individual. The strength of each individual within the team is the team. So what that means is the team provides a strength, motivation for individuals within the team to perform. And when individuals within the team perform well, it makes the team even stronger. Does anybody know who said this? A guy by the name of Phil Jackson. If you follow sports, legendary basketball coach, Los Angeles Lakers. And he led a number of winning teams. He built a very strong team back then. So some of the strategies to build a team: organize workshops. There are many experts out there who have worked and been educated to bring team building strategies to the workplace and to sports teams. Have regular team meetings. This is the one I prefer. I have a staff meeting with my group every Monday morning. They don't know it, but I also use it as a team building session, because what I could do is run through the agenda, have it done in 30 minutes. But I extend it. I allow people to bring up personal matters within conversation. So it's not just about us talking about what's going on within the business, but without their knowledge, I'm having them get a little bit more personal so that we all get to understand each other a little bit better. When you hire or when you bring people onto your team, think not just about whether or not they can do the task that you have for them, but also think about attitude. How will the attitude of this person affect the team dynamic? So This is something I do when I'm interviewing for a vacancy. I pull a resume. The resume is going to tell me whether or not this person is competent and qualified for that open position. When I sit with them in an interview, I'm already satisfied about that part of it. What I'm looking for now is, are you going to fit with the other people who are working in the organization? So I'm not doing preset questions. My questions come from, it can simply start with, well, how the person enters the room, how the person is dressed, how the person speaks. My questions flow from responses, verbal and facial, and I just look for little things. So an interview can last for 30 minutes, but it's not really about competency. It's about, well, are you gonna fit with the workplace culture that we have created? So staff for aptitude and attitude. When things happen, don't let them fester. You have to act fast and you have to act fair. What does fair mean? If two individuals commit the same offense, the punishment has to be the same across the board. Otherwise, team leader is going to be accused of playing favorites. Recognize and celebrate success. So once you establish your goals and the team starts to achieve those goals, don't wait too long, or always remember, hey, you guys are doing a good job, or you did a good job. Congratulations. Keep it up. People appreciate it when their efforts are recognized. Speaker before me, this is interesting. Didn't know that it would be mentioned, but he did say it. Establish a relationship with your employees, with your team members. But as a team leader, you have to recognize that there has to be a line at some point. So establish that relationship, know your individuals. But they say it's lonely at the top. You can't make friends. Because ultimately, your responsibility, if you're the guy like me, the CEO, your responsibility is to the business. Make sure the business succeeds. If you're a supervisor, your responsibility is to make sure that that area that you're responsible succeeds. So know the people who work for you. But sad to say, the friendship part of it, you have to, as much as you may want to be friends, you have to avoid being friends. How do we overcome challenges? And what are some of the challenges that we face? Once you start dealing with teams, you're dealing with individuals. Each individual has his own personality. And there are going to be times when that personality just doesn't fit. It's causing disruption. It's causing discontent. That's your bad apple. Once again, people are different. Different opinions may bring conflict. Team leaders have to consider how to deal with conflict when conflict arises, because conflict inevitably will arise. Sometimes you have that one person who is just not engaging. They might do what's absolutely necessary as far as the job description is concerned, and then no more. And then team leaders sometimes need to look within. Because if the team leader's attitude is off, the team is going to feel it. And it's also going to start reflecting in how they perform. This is one of the points that I have problems with from time to time. Things will go bad. Things will go wrong. Sometimes just don't make it over that line to achieve the goal that you're trying to achieve. For me, it's never been about placing blame. I really don't care who in the team slipped up. For me, it's what's the solution? How do we prevent what happened from happening the next time around? Teams are made up of individuals. Individuals are human beings. Human beings are not perfect. So we will make mistakes. So it doesn't matter where we are. We have to allow for failure. We have to accept that there are going to be times when somebody messes up. And as long as it's not intentional, we have to accept that this is just part of being human. And as a leader in an organization, these last two, I always accept that it's my fault. Because what could I have done differently to make sure that whatever went wrong didn't go wrong? And I always tell people, when we have a good event, when things are going well, it's the team, it's their work that made it happen. If something went wrong, it's my fault. All right, so I'm going to give you two case studies from personal experience. Disgruntled employee, let's call her Mary. Mary has been on the team for a while. She's integrated well, got along with everyone, and then one day, that just disappears. And she comes to work, she's on time, she does what needs to be done, but she stops engaging, she stops interacting, and her demeanor is such that nobody wants to be around her. Like I said in a previous slide, when things like that start to happen, act fast, act fair. I try to talk to her, and the response is aggressive, unfriendly. I decide to leave it alone, see what happens. It got to a point where I heard Mary really yelling at another one of the employees. This happened one day. Other employees had come to me and said, we're concerned, something isn't right, we're trying to find out what's going on, but she's not communicating with us. But that day, when I heard her reaction to someone who's, I think this person had chuckled at something. Mary took it the wrong way. I called her to my office. I said, look, don't know what's wrong, but it's time to go. The reason I took that decision was if I kept her on much longer, it was going to adversely affect how the team performed. And as a person responsible, I couldn't allow that to happen. She wasn't opening up, and she was making everybody else on the team feel uncomfortable. So the only solution I could find was to take her off the team. Employee conflict. Spoke about that earlier. So I had two employees who got along extremely well until one day they had a difference of opinion. It didn't really affect the team dynamic too much, but it went on for a while, for a couple of weeks. And instead of getting better, it continued to get worse. So what did I do? Call them to my office. I said, look, you guys are adults. You're gonna have differences of opinion. But what's happening here is not helping the team. So you need to fix it. The conversation was a little bit longer than that, but that's the gist of it. I told them, whatever it is, I don't want to know. Fix it, get it over with. They left. As I recall, I think one was in tears because she knew that I was disappointed in what was happening. They tried to fix it, didn't work. Then I had a conversation with them individually. As a matter of fact, one had just come on staff, I think maybe 9 months earlier. I said to her, look, you're fairly new on staff, but you are the more mature of the two. I am disappointed in the way you're handling what's happening. I don't want to have anybody leave this team because you're both contributing tremendously. And I told her I'm expecting improvements. And she left my office. She said, yes, she understood. Over the next few weeks, as days would go by and I'm sitting in my office, I'm listening to conversations on the outside, I could see that a genuine effort was being made for her to fix what was happening. And the relationship improved. Didn't get back to where it was, but started taking a turn for the better. And I don't want to end without acknowledging my current team at the Chamber of Commerce, because most Tuesdays we have a luncheon at the Westmark, and I'll go on stage just like I am now, and I'll run through the program. Pastor Derek does invocation for us. As I'm speaking many times, you'll see the slides from the PowerPoint change without me doing anything. We have a nicely laid out script that does run of show really well. We have people on the outside who check participants in. We have somebody who sells raffle tickets, all members of my team. So everything appears to be seamless in the way that they're happening, but it's because we have these regular team meetings. We discuss what's gonna take place, and what they do in the end. They make me look good, but they're all running around while that event is taking place to make sure that if something starts going wrong, somebody is there to make sure that it's corrected. Also, they've gotten to the point where each person has the next person's back. So if you're in an area where it's your responsibility to make sure that area runs well, but you need help, there's always going to be somebody on the team who is ready to come over and make sure that everything runs well. And with that, I want to thank you for listening to me. If you have questions, I'm willing to take them. My contact information was there, still there. Okay. If you want to reach out to me, feel free to do so. Telephone number, email address, and you can also find me on LinkedIn.
We could probably take one, maybe two. You want to stand up and yell one out or raise your hand? Anybody have a question? There we go. So just so the online people, it was a question about morale building. Could you give another example of morale building, just so they can hear us online? Go ahead.
Sure. Didn't realize I'm online.
Yeah.
All right. So morale extremely important, because if morale is low, it really is going to affect productivity. It's important for people to be on the same page as to where a business, a department, a unit is going. A lot of times we make the assumption, okay, I'm working at a bank, so everybody understands what a bank does. All the employees will be on the same page as to what the ultimate goal of their individual departments are. But I believe in team meetings, we need to establish that everybody knows what the goal of the department is. That's one. It's also important to, like I said earlier, recognize the different achievements of each person. I used to think, so I'm guilty, that once a person does a job that they're being paid to do, that should be enough. But it's more than just that. Once they do that job, show them that you appreciate that they've done the job well. And on the other side of it, don't be quick to reprimand people when the job isn't done well, because, like I said before, appreciate that there is going to be failure, because we're all humans. So chewing out is not absolutely necessary all the time. I believe discussing issues help more than yelling at an employee and saying, hey, you messed up badly, and this is going to reflect on the whole team. It will, yes, they already know that, yes. The discussion should be, well, how do we prevent it from happening next time? That's been my approach.
Another question, or? All right. Thank you, Donald.
So,
we appreciate it.
Thank you all so much. It's been fun.
So at this time, I'm going to say a prayer, and then hopefully they're about ready for lunch, but you can, run to the restroom if you need to do that, straight down the hall to the left. But we'll have lunch out there. Alaska Lizzie is our caterer today. Some of you know her. She's kind of a local celebrity, kind of fun. And anyway, she always does a great job. Be sure to thank her if you see her. But let me say a prayer, and we'll let you go to lunch here. Dear God, thank you for this time together. Lord, I thank you for each of these leaders. They're busy, and I took time to prepare, to think about how to do this better, how to move forward, how to move people forward, how to help them to blossom, to flourish, to thrive, help them reach the mission of the organizations that they work for. Lord, we just help us to grab what is most helpful to us in our particular situation. Lord, we do ask for your blessing on the food and the time together and the connections that will be made, and we just ask your blessing in the powerful name of Jesus Christ. Amen. So just for clarity, and also for those online, so we're going to have lunch, and we have the tables on either side. That's probably the best way, because soup is one of the main things. But you can sit here. There is some seating where you got coffee and donuts. You can sit in there as well. I mean, you can sit here. It's just a little harder to juggle soup. But I encourage you to do two things. One, just connect, engage with one another. But we're gonna restart about 12:45, so I'm giving you a little bit longer than in past years. And so we'll get going at 12:45. There are, in the middle of every table, there are some questions. So you could just spend the whole time engaging if that's what you want to do. No pressure. But if you want to, I think the way we process is to actually discuss some things. And I think that there's a lot of wisdom out here, not just up on the stage. And so I think it would be worth your time to get some of those questions and just talk a little bit during your lunchtime. So connect, build some friendships, but also maybe do a little bit of processing and asking some of those questions if you like them. So I encourage you to do that. So head out in the lobby. We'll do lunch. Hey, Deli, do you know, are we good? Deli? Oh, she's not paying attention. My wife has, she's toned out my voice here. Do you know, are they ready? Can you tell? Well, I'm going to release you anyway, and they're ready. Okay, all right. So have lunch. We'll be back here. The next thing will be interview with Jeff and Nicole at 12:45.